Hello and welcome. In this video I'm going to introduce the concept of if statement in VB.NET. And so I'm going to do a little bit more than merely introduce the concept because the syntax is pretty basic, but it gets a little more complicated as you go along. So I've created this form where the user is going to input their numeric grade. Essentially you're going to click get grade and it's going to generate a letter grade. So I'm going to double click on the button here. In other words, I'm going to define the click event for this button. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to get the user's input. So dim picked as, and probably a good type for that would be a double because it certainly could be a decimal. And I'm going to assign it on the fly. So text grade is what I called it. Dot text. Alright, I can see at this point that I don't have option strict on. Do know that a text box is always a string, and so I should explicitly convert it here. Right, I didn't get an error because I don't have option strict on. You probably should, and so should I, but I'm just going to do it manually. So now I've got a double to a double. Life is pretty good. And so now I'm going to start using an if statement. So I want to look at this variable called picked, and I'm going to say, if it's above a certain percentage, then I want to give you a certain grade. So I'm going to write the keyword if. And it's kind of neat. If I just press enter, oh, I don't have a condition, but if I have a condition, like, so that's invalid. So if percentage is greater than 90, now if I go to the end, right, it finishes it off for me. So keyword if, keyword then, keywords and if. And that's really what needs to happen here. So if your percentage is greater than 90, then text letter dot text equals a. Pretty basic, right? So if whatever you enter is greater than a 90, you should get an A. I'm going to run this thing just to show you how it works. It's pretty not that exciting. 98, A, good, right? And if you do something below that, right, this is an if statement and it's complete. Oops, I need to clear that, right? That probably should be something I do. Nothing happens, right? Because that does not meet our condition. So let's examine the syntax. If, this is what is known as condition. One of the things that you will also always see me do is I wrap my conditions in parentheses. You don't have to, but I do, right? Because I don't know, that just kind of looks incomplete to me. So I take anything and I wrap it like that, and so you can see my condition. Now here's a common mistake, and I'm not going to get too carried away, but let's do another if statement. If picked is greater than 80, then notice how it auto-completed, so it demands that you fill this in as you go, which I don't like to do. Dot text equals B. Alright, so now if your grade's greater than 90, great, you're going to get an A. If your grade's greater than 80, you're going to get a B. So let's run this. This is the least I can do to make this example worthwhile. So I do 85, get my grade, and it's a B. Now I should be clearing the form, but I'm just not. Let's do 70. Quite predictably, nothing happens. Let's give 95. No, how about something really good, like 100%? Right? This is an A for sure. Wait a minute. That's not an A for sure. So let's look at what happened here. So let's trace our way through the code. So we get here. Here's where we get our variable. It's 100. And this if statement right here is evaluated, right? Think of it going like from there to there. So it certainly is above 90, right? And presumably text letter grade A, right? So it's going to output an A. And then we reach the end of our if statement, and we reach a separate if statement right here. These if statements are completely disconnected, right? I mean, I could have all the space in the world between them. So this is an A for a fraction of a second. Then this gets evaluated, right? And 100 is also greater than 80, right? So what do I need to do? Do I need to do some kind of a compound inequality to make sure it's between 80 and 90? Well, that would be one solution, but there is a much better solution. So really what the problem is here, both of these conditions are true, right? These evaluates the true, this is true, and all we really see is the last result, right? And if you could see the flickers on my screen, maybe it was an A for a second, but it ended up as a B, which is a problem. So really, that's not what I wanted to do. What I wanted to do was an ElseIF, right? ElseIF implies that these conditions are, in fact, related. And really what that implies is that only one of them can be true. So now if this runs, if this is true, it's going to print out an A and whoosh, goes down to the end of the end if, and it's done, right? But when I had completely separated if statements, I could have all of them be true. Right, but now only one of them can be true, and let me prove this to you right now. Let's just go straight to that break. Right, so I did 100, and before it was a B, now it's an A, because it goes here. This is true, right? And since these are related conditions, it never even evaluates this part. It's important to understand that. Let me show you the last construct. We're talking about if statements. We're talking about else ifs. I also would like to show you an else. Notice that there is no condition after my else. There shouldn't be a condition after my else. This is a pretty weird class because there's A's, B's, and F's, I guess. Dot text equals F, right? Unusual grading scale, but hey, it's not really my problem. So what's happening here is there's no condition because it's not else, percentage is greater than 70 or something like that. It's else. Right, so anything that doesn't fall in one of these buckets is going to fall here. So anything above 90, that's a huge bucket, right? That's from 90 up to, I don't know, millions, billions of numbers. This is a relatively small range here. This says greater than 80, but really it means between 80 and 90 because everything that was already 90 got picked off. And this essentially is just everything below 80. Of course, maybe some of you are wondering something like, well, what if they enter a word? Well, let's just pretend that that's impossible at this point. Right? Because that's not a good answer, but it's what I want to do. And you can see that this thing is working. I do have one problem, though. Well, presumably it's a problem. What if I do 90? I would think, I don't know, should that be an A or should that be a B? It says it's a B because what I really meant to do here is or equal to, right? And that's the syntax for or equal to. So is this inclusive of 90? I would argue that it is. I've never been in an institution where 90 was a B. Right, and let's run this thing, and let's just go straight to, basically pressing on the seams, and now I get an A. All right, so a lot of stuff going on there, right? I talked for 7 minutes about basic syntax, but really, I kind of covered a lot of things here. This is the correct way to structure this. Not to say that a program wouldn't have multiple if statements, but in an instance like this, where you're evaluating ranges of data, you certainly want to use else ifs. So another couple key ideas here is every if statement has to have an if, right? That's just how it starts. You have to check at least one condition. You could only check one, as I did in the beginning. Another thing is every if statement has at most one else, right? You do not have to have an else, but you can only have one else, right? I mean, think about that for a minute. You can't have two catch-all buckets. Else ifs. These are the more interesting one. Else if is essentially, I guess you could say you don't have to have any else ifs, but really you could have as many else ifs as you wanted. And if you do have a lot of else ifs, oftentimes that's when you use something like a select case, or in other languages a switch statement. Not mandatory, but now you've heard it all about if statements. Now, I can do more interesting examples, but this kind of illustrates most of the basics. Thank you for watching.